Okay, so welcome back today. We'll have more people trickling in as we get started. One thing to note that's a little different is that there's closed captioning now being provided, so that if you want to look at the course with having the closed captioning at the bottom, you can click at the top where it says "Turn it on." Or go to what it says more captions and turn it on. So that's there for you. So what we'll be working on today, so we are going to be wrapping up our active listening part, and I'm going to do a quick review on active listening. What we'll be doing also is we're going to have, if you can get a pen and paper or a pencil and paper, you'll need it for a little bit in just a few minutes. So if you have something somewhere that you can use, please go ahead and get it. Welcome, Erin. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, Erin. I think you just got to audio now. Nice to see you. What we were just saying is to get a pen and paper, if you can, to write something down for an activity that we'll do in just a few moments. And here's Micah coming in. So today we're going to continue reviewing the active listening part. So we ended on active listening yesterday, and so we're going to continue on with active listening, doing a review. Hi, Micah. And then we're going to talk about feedback and why it's important and how to give good feedback, which is always kind of a hard thing to do if you have to give some information that maybe is not the easiest to give someone. What's a good way of doing it? And then explore the concepts of trust and benevolence. I know I have spoken about that section coming up soon, so we will be talking about that. So hopefully Yuri will be able to come today. So since I know that he wanted to hear more on that part. So again, if you can get a pen and paper, we will be doing an activity soon that you'll need it, and we'll go from there. So welcome. Hi, Lovi. Welcome everyone to today's session. So how I left off yesterday was talking about active listening. And what's kind of funny about the whole active listening section is it requires you to actively listen to me for quite some time. It's long, and that's why I wanted to review it a little bit more today as people are joining us, so that you can sort of hear a little bit more about what we were talking about. Thank you, Christine. Uh, Hi, Yuri. We were actually just talking about you saying part of what we're going to be doing today is about trust and benevolence. So I know that's something that you wanted to talk about as well. So welcome, everyone. We're going to, those are the objectives that Christine has put up. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen again to review the active listening section that we talked about yesterday. So active listening, it starts off with unfiltered listening. And what that means is when somebody talks to us, we tend to put our own judgments, biases, thoughts. Even we just want to be empathetic and let a person know that we identify with them, that we want to that we understand them. So the idea of active listening is to put all that back, right? Dial it all back, try to put it at the back of our heads, to just focus on what the person is saying. Just focus on what they're saying, and focusing so much on what the person is saying in the sense of you're going to repeat back to them what you heard. You're going to repeat back to them what you heard. So I gave the example yesterday. It's like when you are in a situation where you introduce yourself to someone and then they introduce themselves and you already forgot their name because you were so focused on you saying your own name, right? But if you had to introduce that person to others, you would be very specific in remembering that person's name, right? You'd be like, I'm listening very closely because I know I'm going to have to repeat it back. Right. So this is part of active listening, dialing it all back, not thinking about your own ideas or things or how you're going to respond, because how you're going to respond is reflecting back what you heard. Now, reflecting back what you heard minus any emotions, right? So if somebody came to you and I'm so upset and da 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 da, and Jen took my pen and I'm so upset, and you don't want to do that, right? You want to be like, what I'm hearing you say is that Jen took your pen and you're really frustrated about it. So you want to name the emotion that you're hearing, right? Because that actual naming of the emotion oftentimes will help people feel seen and heard. And this is the whole idea of active listening, is making people feel seen and heard. And then once you've given back what you think they're saying, ask questions. Help me understand why that's important. Help me understand a little bit more about what we can do in this situation. You know, being able to say, and who, what happened. Let me understand, so you can clarify, ask clarifying questions, and then you want to generate ideas before you judge them. And that was a big part of what I think we ended on yesterday, was sort of the let's not judge others. How can we just hear them and make them feel seen and heard without judging them? So we talked about this and this concept of it being like an iceberg, right? So what you see on top is just what's on the surface. All you hear is I want, I need, I need, right? But there's other things going on below the surface, like this iceberg. So I'm going to tell you a basic story that kind of nails in this concept, but it's very basic. So there's a mom, she's got two kids, she's got one orange. Both of the kids want the orange. I want, I want, I want, I want, I want, I want. What does the mom do? What does mom do? One orange, two kids. Micah, you started.
Two.
Cut it in two, cut it in half.
In two.
Cut it in half, okay? A couple of cut it in halves. What else? No one gets the orange.
Go and
No
buy
orange for anyone. What? What'd you say, Olga?
Go and buy second
Go get
orange.
it. Go get another one. Use more resources. Find another orange. All right. So here's where I was saying, what's underneath, right? Does the mom ask why you want the orange? You assumed you just want to eat it, right? But no, one kid wants to use the peel to make a cake, and the other kid wants to use the juice to make orange juice. So if you were to cut it in half, neither would have been able to do what they wanted to do. But if you asked why, then you would have found out that you could actually make this work, right? But if you assume, nobody gets what they want. So I know it's a very basic story. Right? No one gets the orange. But it's a way to start thinking about, how do you understand what's going on beneath the surface, right? And by reflecting and letting a person hear that you're hearing them, you're using the exact words that they are using without any escalatory language. You're really trying to understand them. You're repeating back. You want to understand why it's important. You're going to ask questions, and you come up with some ideas. Actually, 3, I want a piece. All right, Micah. I could use an orange this morning too. But this is something to think about and it's not possible to actively listen all the time. It's just not possible, right? Because it takes work. You have to practice at this. You have to practice to actively listen. You have to be intentional about actively listening. So, I'm going to do a activity with how we might actively listen, especially on Zoom, which is another reason why Michael likes to work in the office. Yes, you really do. I mean, you can get so distracted, right? So this is why I wanted everyone to get a pen and paper or a pencil. what we're going to do is let's see what listening sometimes can be like. All right. I'm sorry. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 6. Yeah. No, we're gonna have 2 people in each room. One person is gonna have a third person, right? And so what's gonna happen is this: is you are going to there's gonna be a link that's gonna be sent out, right? Only one person is to open that link. Even with a group of 3, only one person is to open the link, right? So I'm not going to give you the link until I finish the instructions. What's going to happen is there's going to be a drawing on that link. The person who looks at the drawing, right, is going to describe the picture that is on the drawing. The person who does not have the link, right, they're going to be the person to draw the picture. Now, the person who's drawing the picture, you cannot ask any questions. No questions. All you can do is draw, right? So person A, you're going to get the link. Person B, you're going to draw the picture. The group of 3, 2 people are going to draw the picture. So that person is going to have an equally hard time trying to explaining it to 2 people. So each group, you will decide who will be the drawer and who will be the one that's going to describe the drawing. All right. You're going to have 5 minutes for this. The goal is for you to draw the picture as accurately as you can based on the description the person is giving you. All right. So let's see. So Christine, can we put maybe Olga and Lovi in the 4th group then? So we have 2 people in each room.
Okay.
So look at that. Good. We have 2, 2, 2. All right. So the group 1 is going to be Aaron and Micah. Group 2, Christopher and Emma. Group 3, Giselle and Yuri. And group 4 is going to be Olga and Lovi. Okay. So now I am going to give the instructions here. Again, do not click on the link beforehand. All right. Oh, we both got it. Okay, so that's the link. All right, that's the link. So does everyone understand what to do here?
Yes, but I don't see the link. Are you going to send it when we go into the next room?
Oh, it's at the very bottom of what I wrote. I'll do it one more time here.
Sorry, Lisa. You sent me a direct message.
Oh, I'm sending it to Christine. So that's why you don't see it.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I got it. Cool.
Gosh, how would that have been? You go into your groups, you don't have the link.
We'd have had some really cool photos. We'd have been all right.
Okay, so you decide who will be the person that's doing the drawing and who's the person that's going to describe. Okay, any other questions? I love this one. So this is a fun one. So off you go into your groups.
How much time? How much time, Lisa? Sorry.
5 minutes, only 5 minutes. So draw quickly. Okay, we'll see you in 5 minutes.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Okay. Aaron was drawing a masterpiece.
We have to see our design.
Something
Can't
else.
wait to see.
Well, I like how that as we were bringing you back into the room, the instructions were still being given.
Yeah, totally.
So how did that go?
I don't know. I've not seen what Aaron drew.
You're like,
how
I'm
was it,
hustling.
Aaron?
I hadn't
I think
seen
it goes with the how good someone who's speaking is actually describing what he or she is looking at. That
Uh-huh.
makes the life of the drawer easier.
Yeah, so the instructions are super important. All right. Giselle, you were about to say something?
Oh no, I can't wait to see what jury draw.
All right, I'm not letting, I'm purposely waiting on showing drawings. I'm purposely
Oh, I can't wait.
waiting. What about the drawers? How did that go for you?
I don't know. For me, it was okay. The instructions were great. I was just like still how the information transferred in my head about like, do I get it right or no? So instructions were great, but perception might be different.
Olga, you're laughing. What were you what were you gonna say?
Well, actually, the picture, to my opinion, was quite easy to explain. I don't know how Lovi understood everything from my explanation, but let's see.
Everybody wants to see what the actual outcome was. Well, before we look at other people's outcomes, all right, I think what I'm going to do is, well, hang on. So I think what's really interesting about this exercise is like, this is active listening in its, at its best, right? Because you have to really filter everything back and concentrate on what somebody's saying, which is hard not to, because if they say what it is, you have your own idea of what that should look like, right? So I see people nodding. So the drawing, if somebody didn't actually say what it was, which I also didn't say that you couldn't say it. So if you said that it was a house, you wouldn't have been wrong in saying it was a house. I've had people sometimes say like, I didn't know I could say that. I was like, I didn't tell you you couldn't say what it was. You just had to describe it. So did anybody actually say, did anyone not say it was a house?
I didn't say it was a house.
Ah, okay.
At least Olga did not say it was a house.
I love he's like, I wish I knew it was a house.
No,
Then for
Olga didn't say
me,
anything.
for me, it was said it's a house, but I developed a perception now. Because I was told it's a house, I had a perception of a house that I imagine she was describing now.
Okay,
And
actually,
I was thinking, I said it was a house, and I was thinking, I don't know what the house across the street from Aaron looks like, right? It could be anything. Who knows, right?
exactly. So we have our own ideas of what a house looks like. So when I would say something like this looks like, a house that you would draw as a child, right? Everybody is going to have a different house that you would draw as a child, especially, cross-culturally, internationally, apartment buildings might be a house, right? There might be all sorts of structures. So, all right, I'm going to have everyone at the same time lift up their paper and let's all do it at once. All right. I'm going to count to 5. And on 5, everybody pull up their papers. All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, wow.
Wow, jury, it was great.
Aaron, bring yours
Christopher, that
closer
looks
to the-
amazing. You got the windows.
Aaron, bring yours closer to the screen because it's blurry. There you go. Oh, now back. There you go. There you go. Wonderful. Look at all these wonderful houses. That was amazing. That was amazing. All right. Thank you, everyone. I am very impressed. Very impressed. You know how to actively listen. I'm gonna do my own reaction. A big heart for everyone. So do you want to see what the house looks like? All right, let me share my desktop. Hang on. there's the house. So it looks like all of you really were able to draw the house. And yes, it is that small. So the person is actually describing something that looks that small. Okay, you see how important it is to really be able to communicate effectively, to be able to really listen, to dial back all that in your head. I've had different times where some of the words didn't translate as well. So the word chimney was not an easily translatable word. And so there was like these things off the house, off to the side. And it was for no other reason, just it didn't translate well. All right. So recognizing how hard it is to communicate in the best of times, right? Because we have all our perceptions, all our ideas, all our thoughts, right? And when you say, oh, but that's not what I said, you as a manager, it doesn't matter, right? Because again, people judge you by your impact, not by your intention, right? So it's your responsibility as a manager to try to communicate as effectively as you can, given email, busyness, deadlines, cross-cultural communication, all the above. So how do we do that, right? How do we do that? Well, we have to give feedback at times, right? And not just, hopefully it just doesn't happen at the performance evaluations, that it happens in an ongoing way, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about these questions here, about what is feedback, and talk a little bit more about what's the purpose? Why is it important? Okay. Because we know what feedback is. It's help people to be able to communicate. And oftentimes when we think of feedback, we want to help people see themselves as others see them, to highlight their strengths, maybe the weaknesses, areas of opportunity. And it provides this basis of learning, and for a manager, this is vital part. And it's a vital part in maintaining and improving relationships, performance standards, all of those things. So if we don't, if we don't give feedback, it's status quo. We're not helping a person grow. It has the potential to improve levels of motivation and performance, but if avoided or badly handled, it can cause at best a kind of superficial conformity, but at worst, it can cause rejection, resentment, all of these things that are just going to bubble under the layers. So we really want to make sure that we give feedback, but we know it's difficult because people don't really enjoy criticizing others. People don't enjoy being criticized. And it's sometimes difficult to accept without feeling defensive. So there's often that fear that a manager sometimes has of like, this is going to be in an argument, the person is going to be upset. I remember watching a manager go into a performance evaluation with a tissue box in her hand because she knew that this was going to end in tears, right? So it's difficult to give feedback, but if it's done properly, right, it might be uncomfortable, but it's possible to learn to be better at and willing to give feedback by remembering a few guidelines. So remembering, as we start thinking about what feedback is that the intention is to be helpful, right? You want to make sure you're talking about a positive reinforcement as well, the person's strengths. You don't want to just go in and be like, you're terrible at this, this, and this, and this, right? There is a point if somebody is so incompetent that then you're looking at an HR issue, right? But you have to have been giving them feedback all along to show that you did try to help them improve their performance, right? And you're not commenting on a person's personality. It's something to remember. You don't want to comment on their personality because that's not something that can change easily, but it will concentrate on like the actual behaviors a person can do something about, right? And I'll talk about that in a little bit more about what areas can you comment on, what will be helpful. But what's important is to maybe use examples, right? And try to do it timely. So it's like in that meeting a month ago when you said, that's not really going to be helpful, right? So you want to be able to say it in a timely way, right? And being able to do it in a way that a person can receive it, especially if you're just being opinionated, that's not going to be helpful either. It's like, I get the impression you're not interested in your work anymore, right? That's not going to be as helpful, right? So you want to think about how you might give information and not give too much information, right? You don't want to just like boom, 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 but eventually the person can't receive it, right? So those are some guidelines about thinking about feedback and when to do it. But what I really want to talk about, and I'm going to give you a model, so don't worry, you didn't have to write all this down. I'm going to give you a model how to do this. But before I go there, I want to show you what I'm talking about in terms of what is where you really want to get feedback on. So this is the onion model. And the onion model, I think, is a really nice way to think about it in the sense of what we have on our outer layer, right? This is sort of, if you think about this on your outer layer is this how you are in, you know, in your personality, right? This is change resistant, right? Or sorry, the personality is in inner layer, and that's change resistant, right? So this is my personality. This is just kind of who I am. I'm like an extrovert, or I'm an introvert, or I'm, you know, I am who I am. This is who I am, right? And that's my personality. But then you have an outer layer, you know, and that's my attitudes, right? These are the things I tend to believe. Right now, I know that especially in America right now, there's just a lot of people trying to change other people's attitudes. Right? And it's also change resistant, not as change resistant as your personality, but your attitudes are based on these kind of formative influences you've had on your life. Right. And then your outer layer, the outer layer of your onion, right? These are your behaviors. And like with any sort of behavior like these, I change it to fit the situation, right? Like I wear clothes. I'm going to wear nicer clothes. I'm giving a training. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to have different clothes. I might act a little differently at the gym than I would on giving a training. I change those kind of behaviors based on whether I'm with my friends, whether I'm in a professional life, whether as, you know, as a mom, all these different behaviors that I have that are less change resistant, because this is how I can operate. So the behaviors are the areas where you really want to concentrate giving your feedback versus trying to change their personality, because that is the personality. So what are some of the ways you can change behaviors? Now, these are the things to think about when you're looking at feedback. So for example, somebody, John is in a meeting and he constantly interrupts people, talks over people, doesn't let other people speak, says the same thing over and over and over again, right? We've all seen that. It can be actually, we'll call that Jane, not John. That's Jane is doing it. So how do you give feedback to her on talking over people and all these things? Well, what's the impact? What's the impact of this behavior? Other people aren't getting a chance to say things. We're missing out on great ideas. We're taking time from this meeting, right? These are the impacts of it. So if you try to talk to Jane, is like, every time you talk over someone, you're always talking over people. You don't listen to other people. I don't know that they're going to listen to that conversation. But if you say, Jane, when you do this in a meeting, other people haven't had the chance to speak. And as a result, we lose out on valuable information that others might be able to provide. Oh, I get it. I see what the consequence is, right? Not I have a not very polite attitude, right? So that is actually a model, how to say something. That's actually a model, right? And that's called the SBI model. And it's called situation, behavior, impact. So here's the situation. Jane is interrupting everyone in the meeting, right? That's her behavior, right? But what is the consequence of this behavior? What happens? We're missing out on what others think. We run out of meeting time. Whatever it is the consequence. SBI, right? Situation, behavior, impact. So we are not commenting on Jane's personality, right? We're not commenting that, she's an extrovert. She likes to talk over people. She thinks her opinion is the most important all the time, every time, right? That's not going to be helpful, right? You may be going into a little bit of attitudes if you've already developed a relationship. You might the attitudes might affect the work, what have you. But again, it's really not the area you want to focus. You want to focus on the outside of this layer, is the behaviors. So situation, behavior, impact. Okay. So I'm going to have you practice this. Now, that's the thing, is that we can look at these models. We can say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I got to make sure I'm not commenting on their behavior. But then when you're in the middle of a face-to-face situation, how do you say the words? Because you could have them in your head, right? And then as soon as you sit down with a person, thinking back about that boss with the tissue box, how do you really be able to get out what it is you're trying to get out, and also be able to feel that you are saying it in a way they're actually going to receive it? All right. So sometimes what I do with this activity is I have 3 people in each room, but Christine, we're going to do 2 people in each room again. So that way they each have a chance to practice. So just 2 people in the room. Now we're going to have a full 15 minutes for this. So you're going to have plenty of time. What we're going to do is have one person giving the feedback, the second person receiving the feedback. Now, sometimes what I do is I have a third person just watching the whole thing, and they can comment on it. But what I'd really like us to do is focus on saying the words. And I'm going to give you a scenario. I'm giving you 2 scenarios, right? So you don't have to just come up with it out of thin air. So one is managing up, and one is being the manager to direct reports. Now, I remember coming up with this scenario a long time ago, and it's like, it hasn't changed since 2013, because it's still the same thing, which is your boss is not giving you definitive answers on the timeline for your deliverables. And it's making it difficult for you to move forward on your project. So that's the scenario, is, boss, I need an answer. I can't do anything without getting this answer. How do I tell you that in a comfortable way? Right? Now, some of you might be like, I have a great boss. I can just be like, yo, I need this, right? We want to act like this is a very important conversation, that you're feeling like you need to have this conversation with your boss. You're not getting the answers, and you really need to address this situation. Then the second scenario is a staff member who reports to you is increasingly demonstrating a lack of motivation and well, a slight attitude about work, responsibilities, so much so that you're starting to get complaints from other staff members. Now, these are both situations that most people have to face in their work. Even if you work in a matrix organization, there might be somebody that's more authority figure that you still need answers from, or that it might be a colleague that you are not getting, you're just getting an attitude from. How do you talk about this in a way that you're actually going to get some sort of result? Okay, so one person is going to give the feedback, 2 people per group, right? So one person is going to be giving the feedback, the other one is going to receive it, and then talk about it. Then the other person is going to give the feedback, and the other person is going to receive it, and then say how that went. So if you're the one that's struggling to manage up, please let that person give that feedback. If you're the one that's struggling to have a direct report, please let that person give the feedback. If both of you are struggling with managing up, both of you use that feedback, right? You don't have to do this, the 2 different scenarios. So, or if both of you is having a staff member that's lacking motivation. Okay. So one person, I'm going to put this back up on the screen, so you remember how to do this. Situation, behavior, impact. What's the situation? What's the behavior you're seeing exhibited? What's the result? Now, this is also when my actors or actresses can really go further as far as you want in saying, as your, as your response to the feedback, do whatever you want. You could be as nice or not nice as you want, right? Because the person needs to practice, and vice versa. Have a discussion on this, and then come back with some of your key highlights. Everyone got that? Got a thumbs up? All right. Yeah, today's our fun day. It's Friday. All right. So we will see you all in 15 minutes. All right. Thank you so much, Christine.
This meeting is being recorded.
So I'm seeing some smiling faces. How did that go? Who'd like to share? Yuri's like, I'm not going to do it. Who would like to share?
Maybe let's Yuri talk. Yesterday he missed our training. We are missing his voice.
He did the specific X. I mean, it's up to you, Yuri. Don't feel peer pressured.
Go, 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 go. Don't feel pressure. Don't feel pressure.
Oh, if you ask, I will share briefly. I was in collaboration with Lovi. It was great. We played both situations. What I shared is that your model was really useful for me personally, and I assume would be for Lovi as well, because I really before was given feedback in both situations. I would concentrate a lot on the on behavior, or even sometimes on personality and the work style of work, and without giving the feedback on the consequences that it might have for the future, for the projects, or consequences for the staff. So now, after seeing this model, for me it was really constructive to give a feedback both as a boss or as a manager, of like to really explain to person why some troubles having a consequences for us as an organization, or as a group of people, or for our projects. So it was great. And yeah, so this is the feedback. And I would name Lovi, maybe she wants to share a bit more.
Okay, and maybe something that I've learned that as bosses, we always have to listen to our employees, and then where need be, we have to acknowledge their work, and still we have to apologize for maybe not paying a lot of attention, but we also have to tell them that we are also seeing that there is some effect that is being caused, especially when you look at the scenario 2, we see that maybe there is some kind of diminishing in one of the staff members, that particular person's work, and then maybe it is also affecting other employees. Not only for this one's behavior, but you may find that maybe they may even lack respect for the manager if he cannot control this particular employee. Thank you.
So, Livy, I like how you're also coming in being a little vulnerable yourself. Like, you know what? I might not have paid as much attention to you as I would have liked. And so I'm recognizing that, I'm acknowledging that, at the same time, this is also a behavior we need to address. Please, Aaron.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. For me, I was the boss for the first time. So Giselle has to come with a situation. But what I picked from here is that when she presented the situation to me, when she gave the feedback, so as top manager, she didn't have, she was not proactive, like coming up with a proposal of dates and of timelines. And I liked that she observed that I'm busy. So said, I know you are busy. And I acknowledge that to say, yes, as this is the end of the year, things have been so hectic. So that actually gave me a sense of knowing that I'm not attacked by my subordinate. Then secondly, she showed that she's concerned. So we mentioned that she's concerned. I felt something triggered in me to say, oh, I think I made something that I needed. It gave me an issue to give an attention to an issue. So, and that the deliverable is affecting both us and the team. So when she gave the feedback, I responded with a leeway to give a chance proposal. And secondly, when we finalized our discussion, we logged our discussion with a deadline to say, so when can this be done? I asked her, and then she gave me a date, and we agreed on that date to say by this date, these things will be done.
Nice.
Then secondly, on scenario number 2, let me just finalize so that she can also add. On scenario number 2, we saw that I was the subordinate and she was the boss, and she came with an issue that I'm not performing well. There had been a change, and as such, I felt my boss not knowing something happening behind me. I had to unpack. So I began to tell her.
Oh, Aaron, we might have lost you. You're paused.
The issues that have been happening at home. And hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Maybe you want to take off your camera.
Me now? Yeah, it was just a surge in it here. No? Oh,
Yes, we can hear you now.
okay. Yeah, perfect. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So on the second scenario, it was like my boss is not aware of the situations happening beneath, or like that illustration of it that you showed. But I presented that situation to my boss, and we agreed in terms of how that can be. I have some situations at home that boss gave me some leave days, and we agreed for someone to take over so that I can solve the situation at home for a couple of weeks. Yeah, that was a situation where something behind is affecting me that I wanted to make sure my boss is also knowing. So in doing that, through empathy, she understood my situation and we came out pro. Thank you. I
Erin,
think
that was
Giselle can add, yeah, anything in.
that was very comprehensive. That you were able to come up with solutions, but not only that, really see the person, right? That there might have been something going on at home, that there was, recognizing that there was, it's the calendar year is ending, and so there might be a lot of things happening with the boss. So there was coming in with a sense of empathy, a sense of understanding, a sense of wanting to like see what the other person was going through before just making assumptions or judgments and saying, oh, like you're just not doing your work, or you're not motivated, or you're not, giving me deadlines. So who was Erin's partner? Giselle? Do you have anything to add on that?
No, I think it was great explanation that Aaron gave.
Good. Well, so that's the thing, is that how do you sort of give feedback and try to make it a positive experience, right? And by being timely, by having these regular conversations, by being prepared, right? Just not walking into it like, oh, wing it, right? You want to be very specific, and if you're criticizing, you want to do it in private. You don't want to do this right in front of a person. Right in front of the group, right? You don't want to make a person feel that you're being critical in front of them, and talk about positives too. So these are ways that you can think about giving the right feedback and being mindful of all these things. And then, especially as bosses, all right, especially as supervisors, managers, how do you receive the feedback? Right, because sometimes it's really hard for your subordinates to come up to you and give you feedback. They might be very, very nervous, right? Because you don't want to give your boss bad feedback. So, breathe deeply, let them know. Do the same thing, reflect. What I hear you saying is, right, the same thing. You can reflect back, and hey, I appreciate you felt okay to come to me and talk to me about this. Right? So very simplified, acknowledge what was said, accept it. Now that accepting it, right, means that you're accepting that they gave you feedback, not accepting that that's the accurate or whatever. You're accepting it and you're saying, okay, how, this is what we can look at. And that's what I liked about what Aaron was saying, is that here's a timeline, here's a deadline, here, I understand what's going on, here, give me 2 weeks, let me do this. So, and kind of recommitting. But how do you do that? Right? How do you do that in a relationship, maybe, that doesn't always have that trust, that doesn't always have that feeling? So I'm going to move us to this, and this is the thing that I was commenting on earlier on, is this idea of trust and respect. Now, Peter Schultz did this here in this sort of way of looking at trust, where if you look at the bottom, low is distrust. So if you had the low and the low right here, there is distrust. So it's a chart that shows to the extent which I, your staff member, believe that you are competent and capable to do what you say you're going to do, and the degree to which I believe you care about me and will back me up. When I have these two things, there is trust. But here, the aptitude, right? So this is the extent which I believe you are competent and you are capable, right? So don't mistake this as like you need to know everything, or that you have you know everything, right? The competence and the capability is that if you don't know the answer, I believe that you're going to go find it, right? That I believe that you're committed, right? That I respect you, right? And then this side is benevolence. I believe you care about me, right? I believe that you will, if the higher managements come up and they start attacking me, I believe that you're going to back me up. I believe that you're going to be there. The opposite of saying, I think you might throw me under the bus, right? I think you might not back me up. I think you might use me as a scapegoat. I don't trust you, right? So recognizing that this affection, right, and distrust, that is really where that can be very difficult on the relationship, because you can still work with your boss if you have respect for them, that they are capable. You don't necessarily have to like them, but you do have to have some sort of respect. So in this side here, that this is okay, but you can build on this affection. If you don't have this, all right, if you just have affection for someone, you just like your boss, but they're incompetent, that's a little more challenging, right? Because how can you work for somebody if you don't believe that they know what they're doing, right? Now let's think about Jane, all right, because it's always easier to think about Jane, all right? Thinking about, well, right now she has distrust, right? That, that it's gonna take a long time to build up trust, right? Trust isn't something that happens overnight. You can have respect, but trust takes some time, right? So with Jane, what she might be able to do is to meet with that community member, meet with the community liaison officer, with another community member, right? So they could build a relationship in which they both trust someone. They both have respect for someone, and start doing small tasks to build that up. Maybe having a community event where he takes the lead, and come into some recruitment interviews for the fundraising post. So you see what I'm doing here is that it will take little activities to start increasing both the trust, but both the respect and the affection if there is zero trust, right? And also it goes the other way. My team, it's not about just how I see my boss, but how I see my team members too. I trust the staff member, and I believe they're competent, and I believe they care about me. I respect them if they have competence. I feel affection towards them if they demonstrate a care and a concern for the team, right? And if that's absent, then there's distrust. So when you start thinking about this is where I was saying I'm gonna talk about this later on, is that it is possible to regain trust or begin having trust, but it takes time. It takes small efforts over and over again to kind of build larger and larger things. So what do you think about it? Does this framework resonate with you? Do you remember going, oh man, I really did love that boss, but she had no idea what she was doing? Or, I had so much respect for her, but man, I knew the minute she walked away, I'd be thrown under the bus. So have any of you experienced some of this feeling? And now that you're putting it in a chart, you're saying, oh, maybe I feel that, or I've seen that before. I've seen that on another team. Emma,
Are you going to share? You'll share this slide, will you, later? And maybe the onion. Can you share those screenshots?
Sure.
Yeah.
We can do that. I think that I thought in Curator there's slides, like all of
Okay, they might be. What I was gonna say is that I have found I haven't had issues creating trust with team with like me to my boss or me to my staff. Or I like to assume they trust me, but what I have had problems with is my staff trusting the next level of leadership. And there are like a couple of people in particular that puts you as a manager sometimes in a really difficult position, because I can't control how they trust the person above or below. I can communicate clearly with both, but if there's a ruptured trust, it's really hard to manufacture that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that happens all the time, right? It's like, that's literally why we were saying managing from the middle, because there's always somebody above you and there's always somebody below you. But again, how you could incorporate little tasks, little things that can increase that trust, bringing that person to a meeting, creating some sort of event, doing some things so that then there's more FaceTime, right? Like more ability to create that benevolence and trust, so that there's little things that move that ahead. It's hard to build this, especially once it's lost. So I don't mean to call on you, Emma, but you definitely were nodding your head. So I was wondering if you want to share.
I mean, I don't have like a specific example, I think, but just that the framework did definitely resonate with me. And I think it's interesting with past supervisors that I've had, but also in thinking about myself, right? And how I can show that competence, but also show that caring, right? And empathy for my team members. So I like that one. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, no, and I think that this, it takes time to have trust. It takes time. It's not something that's like, oh, I trust you like implicitly, right? The first minute I meet you. Part of also what is important to think about in this model, some of this also goes to communication biases, right? So if you're a task-oriented person and you jump into work one-on-one, you miss an opportunity to develop a personal relationship with someone, right? So you might want to spend a couple minutes at the beginning of a meeting to just, hey, how was your weekend? I remember I had one boss do that to me. He was like, how was your weekend? And I was like ready to get stuff done. I was like, what do you care about my weekend for? And I thought, oh, he's developing a relationship with me. I was just ready to go, get my stuff done, it's Monday. But so being able to catch up informally, this can be both task-oriented and people-oriented. And so another way that can go from respect to distrust is mismatched expectations. And we'll talk about that in a moment of how you might be able to match your expectations. But if for example, you reach out to someone and you don't get an immediate response, maybe that, or get a response for hours, that might decrease trust. But also, if then there's a good working relationship, then you realize that might not be the case either. So I'm also thinking of a time where I used to be like, my boss would ask me to do something and I would immediately respond, right? This is pre like normal remote working days. So like it was a privilege to work from home. And so I felt like I had to respond immediately, anything she asked, over and over again. And she told me, you know what, Lisa, I don't want you to answer emails immediately, because I trust that you're doing your work. And I know that you're stopping doing your work because you're answering my emails. And I don't want you to do that, because I want you to focus on your work. And when you're done, you can answer me, because she trusted me. Right. So how do you decide what's important as a manager and track both the activities and the people? Right. And one way to do that, right, and this is kind of the last thing that we're going to talk about, is SMART objectives. Now, not everyone likes SMART objectives. and I will share them on the screen. SMART objectives are ways of being able to kind of be on the same page as to what the objectives are. And they say SMART as in specific, measurable, action-based, realistic, and time-based. Right. Now, it's a way for managers and direct reports to answer the question, how do I know what success looks like? You know, that you're both on the same page of what needs to happen. And your direct report does every time that they oh, thank you, Christine. Every time they achieve what they say they will, right? And you build that trust when you don't micromanage and you give them a stretch assignment. And this can increase motivation. Now, again, not everyone likes SMART objectives. And the reason why that is because oftentimes, especially in the NGO world, our things are fluid and the targets change and things move, right? So sometimes that people prefer what's called OKRs, objectives and key results. So here are the objectives that we might have, and then here are the key results, right? Micah's saying that I saw something recently that changed the R to radical, risky, and the E to exciting. Because if it wasn't exciting or had an element of risk, it was less likely to get done. Interesting. Whatever it is, right? We're throwing in all these acronyms, and I want to make sure that it's not about the acronym, right? Whether it's a SMART objective or it's a objectives key results. What you're trying to do is you want to be able to have clear expectations of what does success look like, right? What does your direct report know what your expectations are, what your priorities are? Remember back to that understanding your boss a worksheet that you could fill out? Because if you have mismatched expectations, then that's part of what loses the trust, right? That's part what loses the respect. So you want to be very clear on what your expectations are. And if you can, tie it to the big picture, right? So you doing this leads us to here, and we're going to make this project work because of your contributions, right? And this is what I think your contributions are. Let me know if you think that you have others. You're engaging, you're understanding. So I'm going to sort of just pause there on this understanding of communication, SMART objectives, trust, to see what you might think of this. Does this make sense to you? Because this is so important in a hybrid work environment as well. Well, I'm guessing I have given you a lot of information here, and that's okay. I'm coming in and wondering, we're at Friday. So excited it's Friday. And how are you? Let's check in. Word or phrase describes how I feel right now. Tell me. We're rounding out the day. How do I feel? Was that overwhelming? Was that, all right, I got it. I'm going to absorb it and I need a weekend to be out of it. I'm feeling relaxed, motivated. Olga, finally done. I have finished everything that I need to do on Friday. All right, more empowered. Oof, I love that. Motivated. Wonderful. Well, this is rounding out today's session. It was a lot to cover, but it's part of ways that you can start seeing things, not just in like what was happening to Jane, right? Where it's just like, I have to do this, and then I'm trying to do this, and da 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 da. Said, how can you be more intentional? How can you think about, oh, we just have mismatched expectations, right? So if we get on that same page, we might have a little bit more trust or respect. Or how can I navigate how my boss is perceived from my direct reports? How can I get them together? Right? Like Micah was saying. Right? How can I find ways to build this rapport with people, to have conversations, to recognize, am I super task oriented? Because I was, right? But it took me a moment when when I started developing my direct reports, I started seeing who was the one that really didn't like to talk very much, right? What was his best communication style? How could I develop a relationship with him if he didn't really want to talk a lot and we were over Zoom? How could I develop a relationship with somebody that over talked, right? Without making either of them feel like their personalities were not okay. And I know sometimes in our world, people that are the extroverts tend to get rewarded or noticed more just because they're more, outspoken. So is that a bias? How do we pull out more from the people that might not want to talk as much? How do we learn how to communicate with them in a way that benefits the team? Because remember, back to our influence strategy, it's a win, and a win. Right? How do we make sure that it's a win for us, a win for who we're trying to influence, and a win for our project or organization? So I'm glad everyone is feeling, as an extrovert, I regularly have to ask myself, wait, why am I talking? Well, on that note, I will stop talking for the day. I hope everyone has an absolutely wonderful weekend. It was a pleasure as per usual. Any questions, please feel free to put in the curator, or you can stop at the end of the training today. Otherwise, thank you so, so much, and I will see you on Monday. Thanks. Bye, everyone.